How is everybody doing? And welcome back for another Strength Chat episode. Today, I have got a very special guest for you. Today, I'm joined by a speed and power coach and a very good friend of mine. Today, I am joined by the one and only Mr. Matt Cook. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very good, mate. I'm happy to be here. I think this is the first time that I've got the individual.
That's it, yeah. For anyone who hasn't listened, Matt was on the podcast with, I suppose, he maybe still is your mentor. Really, would you say, yeah? With Jonas Dodu, great speed coach, Speed Works, which Jonas runs. And if you haven't listened to that podcast, that was a really good insight into sort of the world of speed. But
good plug there.
Taking the world by storm with Transferable Training. His own podcast this week. So first up, how are you? What have you been up to? What's been happening in your world?
Yeah, so obviously, probably like everyone in the whole entire world, we've been dealing with COVID, and I'm sure you probably had numerous chats and started off numerous podcasts with the chats around what everyone's now doing in this new world, and so that's obviously been an adaptation and probably been something that's essentially probably pushed me on a little bit more now. Has certainly definitely brought me out of my comfort zone and pushed me along a little bit. So yeah, we're very much now building up an online training opportunity. We're growing the PT stuff. Still keeping going with the group training stuff that you know yourself that happens at Primal, and now we're getting to a point where September time is now going to become all me. So that's pretty exciting, and I'm looking forward to that challenge. And we'll see what it brings.
Yeah. Oh, good. And it was interesting as well, because especially having sport being off for so long, like we've had conversations about this in the gym. How have you find, this might be a little bit of a tangent, but how have you found, new people coming in and working with you, kind of, wanting to get their bit between the teeth, if you like, with, rugby season coming back up, football's already playing? Because I know, obviously, working with the professional athletes that you've worked with, but also, working with the grassroots athletes that you're working with who are wanting to, get involved in that elite sport. How have you found sort of that, with everything, coming back up a little bit more at the I don't want to say a lower level, but do you know what I mean? The people who are looking to push on a little bit.
So I think it's really important to note that in a world of social media where it's very easy to make yourself look like you're having a world of a time, there's been some tough times where I've asked a lot of questions of myself in terms of why I'm doing this, and am I actually, can I make this work? COVID has definitely, we've seen some good times and some bad times, but we're certainly well out of the bad times now, and really building quite nicely. It's really exciting. It's probably gone past the point of not necessarily exciting, but we're now back into sport, and sport's been rocking and rolling a little bit now. We're over that bit of sport's coming back. Yes. So yeah, it's been cool because we've had so many people reach out of like you said, very, very different levels, be it kiddies who are wanting to get a little, or I guess parents are wanting to help their kids along and probably push them in the right direction, and maybe see some of the work that we do is really valuable. I've had some great opportunities with some pro boys and girls who essentially have potentially not been able to train the way that they wanted to do, be it through cancelled games through COVID, or essentially a season gone if we go back as far when COVID first hit. And then we've had some things knocked on the head because of COVID that has then re-picked back up as well, which has been good. The consulting stuff is now starting to take off again. which is great. Obviously, that was kind of well knocked on the head, and even staff that were part of the team, there were employees of the team. Those guys were on furlough, so there's no way in hell that they're going to bring someone in who's not even part of the team. All those things have a knock-on effect, and have certainly been a learning experience, the ups and downs of it all. And certainly now, like you say, coming out the back end of it, sports back, we're well into the role of it. It's changed a lot of the games. You can see that rugby league is way faster because of the rules. The injuries are high. So that's an interesting thing, and we'll see how that adapts through different sports as well, as some rules have changed. So yeah, all interesting stuff, all good fun stuff, and like a good human being does, we've adapted and we're here now.
Yeah, definitely. And as well, like I say, I'll probably keep referring back to these conversations we had during, lockdown and the gym being open and closed. Sometimes it was, even though there were, some maybe dark times, if you like, I think the one value that sort of is undervalued is time. You got time to get people to put things in place to then, right? Because at some point sport was going to come back. Yeah, and the fact that it's all up and running now, having them systems in place there. So I gave a little bit of an introduction, and I've touched briefly on, the elite athletes that you've worked with, the grassroots athletes that you've worked with, but also, the fact that you have done the internship with Jonas and worked at Speedworks. And from the last time that you're on with Jonas, obviously I know your background, but for any new listeners, for anyone who might not know who you are and your background, just want to give a little bit of a background to yourself.
So sports science degree, played rugby at both rugby league and rugby union at a decent level, and that is my background of sport. Various injuries down my career as well, which has probably led me on this path, but was always probably like a lot, the conversation has been had a lot, but seeking out how to be better for your sport probably leads you down this path of S&C and trying to get every little inch that you can out of yourself. And you realize that you start and enjoy it. So it's been very much a path from there. I am still a coach at Primal Gym with yourself. I have my own business that is Transferable Training. That is, for all levels, and is basically geared towards people who want to get better at their sport and want to transfer their S&C to being better at their sport. And usually that comes under the lines of speed and power. I'm also doing a little bit of consulting, whether that be with individuals or with teams, and one of the teams is Newcastle Falcons, probably something that's reasonably close to your heart, being up north.
I know, that's it. We've just lost a load of southern listeners now. They're just being like, "Oh, we're not too far." Obviously, you've had a wide range of spectrum of clients, if you like, especially starting out working with general population, but then becoming more and more specific. Got me put long teeth in today. But also you mentioned there about, started off playing rugby and then got a little bit more interested in S&C. And I think, especially for a lot of people will think, oh, well, you're just an S&C coach then. You're working with athletes. You must be a strength and conditioning coach. However, I think you've sort of taken it that next step, if you like, and a little bit like the introduction is you're a speed and power coach. That's your speciality. And, you think about what's going to make, and I think it was actually you that said this, what's going to make more of an impact on a pitch, just being really strong, especially in rugby. Or is it going to be the fact that you can change pace at speed? What's going to actually, change a game compared to, you're just getting really strong. That's not necessarily going to be as beneficial on the pitch. Yes, it serves a purpose, but not going to be as beneficial. So kind of the first question I wanted to dive into is, what is speed, and what makes people fast, and why is it why do you feel it's so important, and is an area now that athletes are coming to you to be like, look, Matt, I want to be faster, I want to improve my performance?
Yeah, so if you look at it from I know when you sent me through these questions, I was thinking about how I could maybe, I guess, just word this a little bit better, maybe away from just simple stride length, ground contact time, stride frequency, speed is, distance, time, all those kind of things. How can we almost make it a little bit more fun, I guess, like make it a little bit more interesting? And I saw a really cool tweet by someone, and I've kind of forgotten the guy's name, but it was one of those tweets that kind of just made me sit back. And even though I've been involved with some pretty incredible athletes being down at Loughborough, it made me sit back a little bit in my chair and was just a bit like, wow, that's actually what speed is. Speed is huge amounts of force, small amounts of time, going in the right direction. But so with the Olympics being on, I saw a guy tweet, and he essentially said, if you said to someone, propel 70 to 90 kilos, so essentially our body weight. So I think this is cool as well, because this is a strength chat as well. So we can all relate to barbells, and we can relate to sets and reps a little bit as well. So we kind of understand that. So he basically said, if you can propel 70 to 90 kilos, 2 meters at a time, for around 20 to 25 reps each leg, do that in less than 1/10 of a second. So each time it contacts on the ground, less than 1/10 of a second. And then if you are in 100 meters, do that in less than 10 seconds in total. So when I think you step back from that and just kind of let that just sit in your head in terms of like, how hard is it just to lift 70 to 90 kilos? Not only then move it 2 meters, then do it on a single leg and do it 20 to 25 times each time, get it off the ground in less than 1/10 of a second. You kind of start to realize what speed is, bearing in mind that most team sports are a running-based sport, how important that then can lay a foundation for performance, I think, for performance and health.
Yeah, definitely. And when you do, because it is, I know from the the content with the clients and athletes that you work with, some of the stuff that you show me, and you're looking at things in a split second, and the amount of force and power that produced there. And one thing that you mentioned, when you first started talking about that, was direction. What direction you want to take. And one thing that I did want to touch on is, when you think of sprinting, when you think of speed, like what you said there, you think of the Olympics, you think of sprinting in a straight line. And when you talk about, because I've seen the drills that you do in the gym, having that power, that force production to then change direction. Do you think that's where, potentially, some speed coaches or S&C coaches in general, especially with the consultancy work that you do, are maybe a little bit scared of speed? And actually, being able to understand it a little bit more of, it's even more impressive, that next layer. Okay, it's good getting people sprinting in a straight line, but if you've got a rugby player, a footballer, ultimate frisbee player, hockey player, they aren't just running in straight lines, or else it'd be a pretty boring game. What are your thoughts on that? And what's your approach to it when we're talking about change of direction?
So I think that the basics will always apply, and that, if you understand that it's big forces, small amounts of time, going in the right direction, they're your speed. What you need to build for speed. And then probably where it then gets a little bit lost for me is maybe a little bit like in the gym. How strong is strong enough? Or how fast is enough? And don't get me wrong, I don't think you can ever be strong enough. 100%. I don't think you can ever be fast enough. But how much time you invest into those things when you've got team training, when you've got line out practice, when you've got scrum practice, when you've got all those other things that are going on, how much time can actually I realistically invest into those? How much energy does it take? Like we've already, if sprinting is such a stressful thing, how much energy can I invest in it? And it's about understanding, okay, if I think we're never going to stop trying to get stronger, we're never going to stop trying to get faster, but where then can I then share my time around? So I probably need to make sure that I'm addressing deceleration. I probably need to make sure that I'm addressing reacceleration after my deceleration. I need to address cutting and swerving and curving and all of those things so that I'm fit for purpose a little bit. So I'm fit for the demands of the game as opposed to being just a track guy.
Yeah.
Being just a track guy or just a gym guy. There's more to it. And I think how you then pick all those things apart and say, well, we need to spend a bit more time here or we need to spend a bit more time, it's very much dependent on the situation, what role you're taking, whether you're an S&C for a team, whether you're like myself, who's maybe working with an individual. That's where essentially, I guess, the magic happens a little bit, and we start to pick apart those things. But the quest for speed and strength and deceleration never stops. It's just how you invest your time, I think.
Yeah, I like how you put that, the quest for speed. I think I want to put that as that's going to be the hashtag for the podcast. But one thing, just thinking about it there, always wanting to push and get faster, and ultimately, it's the results at the end of the day, because if they aren't getting faster, right, what's happening, what's going on? And the key thing that you said there was you still need to enjoy it. It still needs to be fun. And do you think? Yes, you touched on the basic, you need to do the basics there. There's certain things that you need to hit that criteria. Yeah. But do you think sometimes you can be a little bit inefficient to go through that process rather than you throw some games in there? You mentioned acceleration, deceleration, acceleration after deceleration. Having those games, you can be a little bit more efficient in your time in terms of training and actually tick off a lot more boxes rather than thinking about, oh, well, I need to do this, right? So we spent loads of time doing that, right? Now we need to move on to the next one, rather than, because especially in team sports, which, is a big area of athletes and clients that you work with, nothing is ever just, it's always stopping and starting, change direction, big bursts of speed, then a little bit slower. What do you think about that? What's your thoughts on it?
So what was the question?
Yeah, I kind of lost myself there, didn't I? In terms of being efficient with the time that you're working with athletes, rather than having to go through, deal with acceleration all at once, deceleration all at once, the games that you're playing, striking that balance between being efficient with your time, but also allowing the athletes to enjoy it and feel as though, it's a little bit more, I don't know whether game situational is the actual phrase. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I think for me, in my experience, the enjoyment of I guess what you spoke about there is always comes from the perception that they're getting better. I mean, we know that even with Gen Pop, right? That people who get better usually will show up the next day. So I think it's really important that you've got some kind of way of saying, here's where we're getting better. Here's maybe where we're not getting better. So I think testing there is an important thing, whether that's part of your training from day to day and you're making that testing as part of training, which is a thing. So that you know where you can spend your area, where you can spend your time and what area. And then I think ultimately then I think it comes down to essentially session design, and then where do I want to manipulate? Where do I want to manipulate my time? So, speaking from our and how we set things out, if we have John Smith come to see us and their messages, look, I want to get faster. Okay, cool, we can do that. But usually then have some conversations that then get to the root of actually what do we actually want to do? Okay, I want to get faster, but I've never actually done any speed at all. Well, we're obviously going to spend time on the basics. We split our sessions up into 3 little sections where it's general skills, specific skills, and speed skills. General skills is very much, for want of a better word, it's just be a human being to start off with. They're still human beings, so we want to get their spine and their hips and in a good place and feeling confident around that. Or what are their feet doing? Maybe the theme of that. So if this guy is really new to speed, okay, well, we're going to learn the basics of acceleration. If it's a team sport, it's always going to go there initially. So maybe we start the session with some upright drills that are not really to do with acceleration, but there may be our end point of our acceleration. So it gives them a little bit of an idea of where do I finish once I've done my acceleration? How do I transition to that? B, it's probably getting some physical qualities that, whether it's elasticity or stiffness, posture awareness, building some basic rhythm, all those kind of stuff. And I still look at that as a probably just being a human being. And then we're starting to then go, right, we'll transition into our specific skills. What's the end goal of our session? So our specific skills are going to target that. So again, if we're just going in on acceleration, then our specific skills are then going to probably focus around just some really basic wall drills and just learning how to project yourself forward and switch back to the ground and then be reactive off it. And so we're learning some technical components, but we're doing it in a slow and very almost stable environment where there's not the madness of essentially sprinting and not having time to really think. They've got a lot more time to think. And maybe we're pairing that again with some general calisthenics, or we finish it off with some explosive med ball throws or some jumps so that they then are starting to feel confident about expressing themselves. And then our speed skills are then going to take care of really the fun stuff. We're going to run fast. We're going to do resisted runs. Yeah, that's probably it a little bit. That may then differ if someone comes and says, hey, I want to get faster, but actually I've done my ACL and I'm just coming back from my ACL. I'm actually really struggling to sidestep off this one side. So for me then, in sport, we're essentially saying, or what we discussed in terms of accel, decel, change of direction, it's options, right? We want to have options. We want to be able to do all things. We don't want any inhibitions holding us back. We want to feel safe and confident to do all those things. So that then session is probably still going to say the same. It's going to be a human being for a little bit. Then we maybe in our specific skills are then targeting a little bit, maybe more some lateral movement to complement his sidestep a little bit. Maybe we're working around some more calisthenic stuff that is around hip-based strength. Maybe it's some crossover bounding and so that he's really starting to feel explosive and attack down and create some good pre-tension around his leg so that he feels really safe and again confident to sidestep. And then again, maybe our speed skills is still the same. It's run fast in a straight line, but then we might just say, right, run fast in a straight line for 10 meters. And then we're just going to maybe give you a cone to go to and say, right, sidestep off the left foot or the foot that you're not feeling confident enough. Right, okay, now we're starting to build some confidence into that area. So I think that probably hopefully gives a little bit of an idea of maybe how do we spend our time and where do we place our time. I think ultimately it comes down to what areas are you weak in? What are you trying to address? What is maybe team sport? What is that already addressing? And then we're starting to then feed in where we want to go, but it's all staying the same. It's just little changes.
Yeah, definitely. A couple of things that sort of stuck out for me when you were chatting there is the main thing you mentioned a couple of times. You have that discussion, right? Okay, what is it? It's like with anything, general population clients. I want to lose fat. I want to lose weight. Well, why? Why did you want to lose weight? Well, actually, I want to look better in photographs. Why do you want to get faster? What's the point of it? Or well, actually, I've never done any speed work, and I'm getting found out a little bit in games. And as well, I think sort of every time that you discuss there, everything is pretty similar, but it's meeting the client, meeting the athlete, where they are. And I think from that, I know for me, listening to that, and I see maybe don't see you as much as what I used to do when you're in the gym, but we've had loads of conversations about speed, and when you break it down, that it's actually for this thing of it's like we've mentioned about this it shall not be named, but just do repeated sprints. Actually, when you break it down, there's a few more layers to it. So for a concept that you think, you just need to run faster, just need to move your legs quicker, there's actually other things that you want to work on. And I think the biggest thing for me is people think that and you'll have seen it from grassroots up to elite level, that they are humans at the end of the day. You mentioned there about the hips and the spine and all that sort of stuff. They don't just you mentioned posture as well. They don't just naturally, athletes don't just pop out like that. It takes work. It takes time to following on from that, then, you mentioned coming in and working for team sports, and obviously you've worked with quite a wide variety of team sports. And I think, how does it differ for sports? If you've got a rugby player and a hockey player, is there a difference? Do your systems change? Because you mentioned, the first question to start is what is speed? How can you look at that? And we spoke about, being able to produce force and 1/10 of a second. Is speed different? Is rugby speed different to hockey speed? Do you know what I mean? And football, and how do you change your approach for that? Or is it a case of we just make slight little tweaks in what we're working at?
Yeah, I think it's 100% just little subtle changes, and then it's just understanding a little bit of the demands of the game, and knowing where your areas are of improvement as an individual as opposed to a sport, and ultimately that comes probably down to testing battery and what do we think, what are the areas of weakness of this person and this individual, and maybe what are their strengths as well, because we always want to keep the strong things strong, while bringing up the weaknesses, and then I think it's massively then about looking at probably the sports and the little subtleties that are around it, in our specific skills. Again, maybe off the top of my head, maybe where rugby boys have to be able to. We talk about being able to disassociate your trunk from your lower body, and being able to rotate so that I can catch and pass and do it all at speed. And they have to do that with a rugby ball. And maybe, that I have a few Frisbee girls and boys down there, but, those guys, they don't run with it. They have to stop. So maybe those guys have to be able to, as opposed to being able to sprint and catch and pass here and do it all while they're running, then maybe their running is just with their heads, just looking behind them, so that they're able to sprint. But I'm doing it as I'm describing it. And they maybe have to look and turn, and that's the subtleties of it. All we've done is say, right, slightly disassociate something from your normal sprinting pattern. But yeah, then we challenge it a little bit with that. It's a normal running pattern, but we've challenged it with something that looks a little bit more like sport. But probably the further and further I go into it, I think those are really small parts. They can be used for making an athlete feel like they've done something really, really productive as a little bit of a sell. And I think that there may be some really rare cases. I will say it's really rare. Sorry.
If you're watching on YouTube, he's not hiding.
My battery's going to go on my laptop. It's very rare that maybe people come with that problem, especially in the lower levels. And come with that problem. I'm speaking like everyone would know what that problem was. When we discussed about the sidestep, and we said, I'm struggling to sidestep off. It's rare that in a lower level people would come and say that. So maybe you have to be a little bit smarter as a coach to spot that. But yeah, I think really the more and more I get into it, I feel that, especially at the higher levels, your coach should be maybe taking care of that a little bit more. And certainly it's probably a little bit of this where we're starting to, I'm going to do this bit, I'm going to do the general skills and the specific skills. I'm going to make them feel good and feel explosive. And then you go take care of the speed skills. You go catch and pass at speed. And then maybe at the lower levels, that's maybe where you drip it in a little bit. Because the lower levels, it feels really good. For those guys, they want to see that you understand their sport a little bit. The higher level guys, they play endless amounts of rugby and football and all those kind of things. They're coming to you to get better as an athlete. Whereas I think the lower level guys and girls are coming to get a better athlete, but they're not being exposed to as much sport as maybe what the other guys are. Maybe they're not getting exposed to catching and passing at speed as much as maybe what they could be. So they're just the nice little drip feeds that you want in there. Like I say, to almost bring some game speed to it.
I thought that was a good comparison between the sort of higher level and sort of the grassroots level. Mm-hmm. One thing that I did want to touch on there is you mentioned about sort of the running pattern and, how specific can you be and, making them feel good and making them feel confident. And with the sort of, because there's research out there on rugby and football and all those sort of things, and you can know the biomechanics of running and all those sort of things. But how much of it, especially, when you might not have, once you've got that, we always go back to it, the basics, the foundation of what you know, but how much of it is just thinking, having a little bit of, right, let's give this a go. Let's try this for some sports that you may potentially think, right, how can I make this a little bit more specific when we're talking about, because you mentioned there, frisbee, where they're gonna have to stand still. How much of it is having just that creativeness to give it a go, but equally to be efficient with your time, which we've chatted about, and to get the results.
Yeah, I think that's just understanding and not getting too carried away with maybe, I guess, kind of what you can see on social media and all those kind of things. The basics are the basics because they're the basics, because they've been around and they've worked so well. Being strong as hell, being powerful, and being just generally pretty fast probably sets you up for a real good time when you're playing sport, right? Because if you're all of those things, you're probably gonna, can I use foul language? I mean, you're probably going to bitch your opponent, right? if you're really strong, if you're really powerful, if you're really fast in a straight line, you're probably gonna knock the hell out of your opponent, especially if it's a contact game. But again, like they're probably probably you'd look at it at the end of the scale. If you're pretty rubbish at your sport, that stuff might only take you so far. That stuff might only take you. I think the beauty of it will always just sit on this nice little bit in the middle, and probably the joy that I've had with individuals has been when they've either had an incredible understanding of the game, but they've got loads of athletic development in them. They're when the good ones come. When they don't have a great understanding of the game, or they're not already reasonably good at their sport, and actually they're okay at their sport, and they're okay they're okay developed physically, then you're starting to go, well, we can get you so far, but that only might then take you so far.
I think that was a good point that you made about, because you do watch, and we've seen them, we've watched them on Instagram, and it's that, oh yeah, do this exercise and it's going to make you a better rugby player or basketball or whatever. Whereas actually, it's a little bit like, from the powerlifting and the strength stuff, like, right, well, this has worked. This is why we're going to do it. You can do all these other fancy things, and it's really, really interesting, and it adds in a little bit of variety. But what's that quote? We spoke about it a while, and it's like 80% of your programming is the basics, 10% is
like your experiment, right?
Yeah. I remember you telling me that, and it was like,
so that comes from a guy called Stu McMillan, and it's a really cool thing to just have in your mind all the time. Is that 80% of that stuff needs to be stuff that sure as hell it's gonna work. It's gonna work. If I'm taking care of that, then it probably almost allows you for a little bit of failure, a little bit of room for the other stuff, right? If you're doing a good job on that and keep consistently doing a good job, and then the 20%, and I hope I get the right percents, but 20% can be stuff that you think works, but it's maybe not got a paper on it that says this works, this definitely works, we know this works, and maybe it's a bit new, or maybe it's a little bit unclassical, and then 10% can be absolute complete, like, let's see if this works. This will be I think that's a great thing to go around.
Yeah, definitely. And this might be we might be going on a bit of a tangent here, but I think that's important for coaches to understand, to be like, look, there's a reason why, you look at some of the best coaches out there, and they're doing this, they're doing it ins and out. And I'm not talking about the coaches that, have millions of followers or anything. I'm on about the coaches that are, in the trenches, if you like, actually using this and having success with athletes. Because you've mentioned coaches who I'm like, oh, I've never heard of them. And then you look and it's like, right, look at the people that they're training. But also I think it's important for athletes and clients to bear that in mind when they're looking for a coach, because it is kind of like filtering out that noise, and
as a coach you have to do that. Coach, you have to do that, because you're bang on, there's so much noise out there. There's so much noise that says single leg lifting is the best, double leg lifting is the best, do Olympic lifts, no, do jumps, just sprint in a straight line. No, don't sprint in a straight line. Athletes don't sprint in a straight line. Do curves and swerves, or do cutting and all that kind of stuff. So you have to figure these things out for yourself, because I've done things, and still to this day I do things that coaches say, this is great, let's do this. And even some of the closest coaches that I've worked with say, do this, this is good. But when it actually comes down to it, I don't know. I need to figure that out for myself. Did it actually make my athletes better? And there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to do it. You have to do it as a coach. And that's probably where it's really, really good that you can go, like we've already discussed, that little percent marks there that guide your program is like, have I got a bit too much of this stuff in there? And that's probably why I'm maybe not having as much success. But yeah, there's so many things out there, and it's like, right, I want to try this. Right, I want to try that. Right, I want to pick out that coach says he's got good results. I'll do that. And then it's finding your own way of doing things, because it's very rare. Like the coaches that I listen to, like, don't get me wrong. I think there's a lot of coaches out there that they've got these big things that just grow out of their noses and get a little bigger and bigger and bigger. And you know, the numbers don't lie. Coaches do. It is a real thing. But there's a lot of coaches out there that are in the trenches, that are doing a lot of good work. And then it's just figuring it out. Does it work for me? Does it work for me and my athletes?
Absolutely. One thing you said there is that the numbers don't lie. You can put the exercises out there, but it's got to be, all right, well, how much faster did they get? Same as with strength. Right, well, did they actually get stronger? Did more weight go on the bar? Because just doing the exercises isn't going to be, and that's where, you know, in a world which is, you know, complex, because I think we spoke about it in the staff room, you know, a couple of weeks ago. Everyone wants to identify as, right, I'm a this coach, I'm a that coach, I'm a this coach. Whereas actually, you know, the proof's in the pudding. You've got to actually, you know, sometimes, you know, put your money where your mouth is and be like, no, actually, this is what I do, and this is why I'm this sort of coach. Mm-hmm. This kind of moves on nicely. I know we maybe brushed over a couple of questions, but now that you've said that about, you know, this works and this doesn't work, one of the questions that I do want to ask is, obviously, you know, we've had that conversation, and a lot of your training is, I know you like being out on the field, especially when it's sunny. You know, being out on the field doing. It's
definitely good when it's sunny. I think it's so good.
So your reasoning or thought process behind not being that dependent on having a gym for training, because you think of the athletic world and you think strength and conditioning in the gym and stuff on the track. Whereas when we're talking about speed and power, you know, is there a way around that? And I've seen the results you get with your athletes. Is there an actual purpose behind that? You know, not being too dependent on using the gym and getting out there and getting results without loads of the other stuff, if you like.
Yeah. Again, I think you can't know these things if you're not actually looking and saying, right, that actually got them better, or it didn't get them better. For ultimately, if you're out on the pitch, that's where, you know, we're a running based sport, or most team sports are a running based sport, a sprinting based sport, a change of direction based sport. So if I'm not out there doing those things, then I would question in terms of like how much can you get out of people. That being said, there's a lot to be said also for being strong, powerful. I've probably one of the biggest mistakes that I've made in my training and has been going a bit movement mad and thinking that probably not appreciating. I was looking for maybe a bit of a fancier word or maybe a fancier explanation, but probably concentrating a little bit on too much on movement, on video and all those kind of things. And yeah, people got better, but they maybe got better on camera. That's about it. Yeah. And I think when you're, and I think probably the word is maybe actually not movement, as more on the technical side of things. I probably got a bit too technical, in opposed to actually maybe the reason why they can't do this technique is because they're not physically capable. They don't have the physical attributes to be able to do what I'm asking to do. So rather than banging my head going, this guy does not understand what I'm saying, they're a moron, it's actually, I should probably get in the gym with them rather than being out on the field. So I'm going to sit in the middle again and say it depends, right? Because there's often times as well that we can get some really cool results out of somebody for 8 weeks. You know, we get them strong because we can do strength training out there, plyometrics, it's strength. The resisted running is strength training. It's just strength training at a different speed. You're just asking them to do it at a different speed. You know, and like I say, we can get some really, really good results maybe for 8 weeks, and they might be even better if somebody comes with us with a big gym history, who's really strong, powerful. But if a 12-year-old girl comes and sees us, which we do get, you know, that's maybe going to be a different conversation. You know, maybe we have 4 to 8 weeks and say, cool, let's get strong on the pulley. Let's get technically really good. Let's understand some things. Let's get fast before we get strong. But then maybe at 8 weeks, things might just kind of just slow down maybe a little bit. And then we might have to head to the gym and get really strong squatting, get really strong doing cleans and all those kind of things. And then maybe we come back out to the field in 4 or 8 weeks time, right? And we've got this newfound strength and power that then we can expose them to being out on the field again. So
kind of goes back to the you know, the start of the chat where you went all in the quest for speed. You know, it's not a case of like you've got to swap and change. And you know, I'm glad you mentioned there about, because people will be thinking, oh yeah, and you touched on it a little bit before, oh, you need to be doing cleans, you need to be doing jumps, whereas actually, you know,
you don't need to be doing anything.
Going back to what we were talking about,
because the only thing that matters is that you're getting results.
Yeah, you know, it is. You're talking about, right, well, it's strength training. It's just a different form. It's just a different type, and it's, you know, things get put in there, and it's like, right, meet them where are that, depending on the level, the age, you know, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
but it is a case of, and again, you know, it's been a common theme all the way through it. What are the numbers saying? What are the results at the end of it? And it might mean that you just need to, you know, from all the, you know, the breakdown of, you know, getting people faster, breaking it down, it might just be a case of, right, let's actually just spend a little bit more time on getting stronger. If we're stronger, we've got more potential to be powerful, right? Let's go back to that, because it isn't a case of, you know, I think the biggest thing is, and again, I can't remember who said this, but it's same as powerlifting and same as athletes. You're not the same athlete that you are when you're 18, 19 compared to when you're an athlete or a lifter, or, you know, a person who's just training when you're 35. Do you know what I mean? There's been a lot of change there. So and they would have gone through a sequence all the way through. One thing that I did want to touch on, let's see if we can get you off the fence a little bit on some of the stuff on there. When you are using the gym, you know, there is a lot of talk about, well, you need to do X, Y, and Z to get them stronger. These are what we go through the strength and conditioning qualifications. This is what gets people faster. Whereas actually, you know, the more you got into the nuts and bolts of it, sometimes you don't even need to do some of that. Sometimes it is just a case of a few select exercises, being efficient with your time, like what you mentioned at the start, picking what we need to focus on.
Yeah.
What's your priority when you're actually, you know, in the gym? What is your focus? What are you thinking when you've got those athletes coming in and wanting to work in the gym? We've done all the stuff out on the field, which is really important. But what's your priority and thought process when we're talking about, you know, in the gym?
Power. Power. Yeah. I think this has been a little bit of a probably something that I didn't concentrate on enough. I was probably in the mindset of, yeah, we kind of build our power out on the field. And And then when we come into the gym, we stay healthy and we get a bit stronger, so that the strength kind of just nudges the power along a little bit. And we stay healthy doing it. Probably a good shout out to Output Sports. We've been looked after with those guys now, and we're doing our VBT stuff, which I'm still really firmly in the depths of figuring out of what makes sense to me, and I'm getting there with it, and why I need to do. But I think the more I've listened to and expanded my knowledge, and maybe based on the questions that you sent to me, we'll maybe expand on this a little bit more later down the line, but more as I've expanded on my knowledge, the guys who are getting some incredible results with not necessarily the greatest athletes in the world, but are getting world-class elite results. We're talking Olympic medals and all that kind of stuff. It's all power in the gym. It's all power. Even the strength stuff is power, because we're still trying to move it as fast as we can. So yeah, power.
Do you think that's one of the biggest changes that you've sort of seen in terms of your coaching, and in terms of, again, I'm going to keep using this quote because I really like it, the quest for speed?
Yes.
Where how far can that take? Because we've spoken about, right, when you first started, it was a lot more technical. Then you moved, and it was a thought process, and it's always going to be a thought process. We chatted the other day about, I was really following this guy who was putting this stuff out, found it really interesting. Yeah. Well, actually, I've got what I wanted from that now. What's the next thing? What's the next project? So, in terms of, is that the biggest change? And in terms of developing further, can you expect, or are you expecting? Can we expect, more changes in terms of, if we do this podcast, a year down the line, actually, do you know what? I was thinking about this, and then progressing from that.
Yeah. I'm kind of, we've had this discussion before, but I'm kind of I don't read very well. I listen rather than reading. I go and meet people as opposed, again, to reading. I want to go and meet people who are in the trenches, who are getting results. And I think I spent a ton of time, yourself, I spent a ton of time in Loughborough doing that. And as I look back at, I guess, my educational and how I've progressed myself, and how I almost progressed my, I guess, my training, I probably look at it a little bit like periodization, where we're essentially saying we want to stimulate and we want to adapt, but then at some point we need to actualize it, and we need to stabilize what we've kind of, what are these new things that we've figured out with our bodies physically. I have to then figure out a little bit of what's going on in my brain, and like, okay, what worked well? This worked really well. Why did it work really well? Well, it's probably because I did this. But what did I do before it that maybe made it improve so much, or go so wrong, maybe? Because don't get me wrong, it's not all good results. So I think having that almost, I can't be in a book all the time, and don't get me wrong, like, I'm doing little bits of it, but I'm very much having like a mindset focus of, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to find everything out of it I can and figure it all out, and I'm going to dive into it, and I'm going to experiment with it, and then I'm probably going to pick apart the bits that I like and make it then my own, and figure it out how it fits into what I do and what I am as a coach. VBT and essentially a power-based model, which there's a sprint coach called Randy Huntington, who's he's the sprint coach, the long jump coach for the Chinese guys, and some of like Su Bingting, who's just run 9:83, I think, at the Olympics. you know, that's crazy for a guy from China. You know, it's not Jamaica, it's not America, this is China. And when someone is getting results like that on a consistent basis, because you follow, you know, Randy, wherever he goes, he's got really, really good results. And then you start to then look at, all right, okay, who else has maybe learned under Randy or done some things off the back of that. And then you see Rainer Ryder, who has got probably the biggest track and field group, you know, in the world, full of just this amazing talent that not only is amazing talent, but then actually gets better. And then you see that actually these guys, there's some crossover there. There's been some connection. This is what this connection is. Okay, maybe there's something in that. And then you see the guys at, I need to get this right, Matt Ray and Dave Ballou, who are at Alabama. I think Alabama, we're at Indiana, one or the other. And again, those guys are having this power-based model, not about lifting heavy weights really slow. They've got this power, and there's this theme running through that they're getting amazing results. So in my head, going back to a question, I've gone off on a massive rampage there, but in my head, I've then gone, there's a connection there, there's a connection there, there's a connection there, and it's getting amazing results. Right, okay, maybe I need to do something about this. So let me digest, let me find everything I can about what it's doing. Let me absolutely, you know, cover the internet with stuff and really make sure that I know everything. Right, let me put it together in what I've got with my time constraints, what I've got with my athletes, and let's see if it works.
Yeah, that goes back to what we touched on in terms of just filtering it out. And you know, there's a couple of guys there that you've mentioned to me, but a couple of guys that I've not heard of, and it's like, right, what results are they going for? And, you know, and that goes for, you know, coaches and athletes when they're looking, you know, look what's going on and make those connections a little bit. That kind of goes into the last question that I always like to ask. And for everything that we've chatted about there, we've chatted about coaching, we've chatted a little bit about, you know, programming and the progression and, you know, understanding speed a little bit more. But for everyone listening, whether they're coaches, whether they're athletes, what would be your take-home points or words of wisdom?
I suck at this stuff. Have fun with it. Yeah. I think there's too much seriousness in S&C. We almost take our jobs a little bit too serious, you know, where I think, have you had Adam on? Have you had Adam?
Adam, yeah. As another plug, he's on another episode.
We chat about this all the time. There's a lot of people in S&C that, you know, and some are speaking out about it, which is cool. You know, are speaking out about it that, you know, the stress of work, or maybe other lifestyle, they're maybe getting some help around it, and they're speaking around mental health. But I think then maybe in that is maybe a bit of job stress and like taking the job too seriously. In my personal opinion, this is my personal opinion. And I think as an industry and as a group of people who essentially should probably look out for each other a little bit more than what we do in terms of S&C. And I keep myself to myself on social media and all those kind of things. I have my contacts that I get along with, and then I very much keep myself to myself. I'm not great at making connections and all those kind of things, but we should probably relax a little bit more and just have a little bit of fun with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes back to, you know, it's like when I asked about your background, you started playing rugby because you enjoyed it. Yeah. You started getting involved in strength and conditioning because you enjoyed it. No one got this and thought, I know what I'll do with this. It's a case of, you know, it's an enjoyment, you know, being involved in sport, being able to work with people and have that fun. I think is important. Whereas there seems to be, and that's why, you know, the first question I asked was, what is speed, what makes people faster. And, you dove straight in talking about fun and, change and, enjoying the process, because then it makes it a little bit better to stick to. And rather than from, the grassroots levels looking up, it's not this case of, no, if you want to do this, you want to get serious. Whereas, I've seen your sessions, I've seen the people that you've worked with progress through, and they're enjoying that. They're enjoying those sessions. But at the end of it, again, a common theme that we've had throughout the chat is, results speak at the end of the day. So I thought that was a good way to finish on. So first podcast on your own. Really enjoyed chatting with you. I hope everyone enjoyed that as much as I did. For everyone listening, though, who might have any questions on what we chatted about today, maybe they want to get involved. Maybe it's athletes who want to get involved coaching with you, or coaches, wanting to pick your brains a little bit and seeing the results that you have. Where can people find you and reach out to you?
Where I'm on Instagram, Transferable Training. I'm on Twitter, Transferable Training. I don't think it ever gets mentioned on a podcast, but I'm on Facebook as Transferable Training. And then you can get me on email as well. I'm just checking whether it's hotmail.com or hotmail.com. So transferabletraining@hotmail.com.
Awesome.
Any of those. Instagram is probably the way. I'm probably most active on there.
That is Instagram taking over the world. It consumes it. Thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on. I've been looking forward to chatting to you on this and picking your brains. Everyone listening, 100%, look at the work that Matt does. We spoke in the podcast about in the trenches actually getting results, and he's doing that. So thanks a lot for taking the time for jumping on. Thanks a lot to everyone listening, and I will see you all next week.